I didn't plan on making a big deal out of my birthday. Honestly, I never do. I'm the kind of guy who'd rather blend into the office than stand in it like a spotlight. But this year, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to feel like I existed to the people I see 5 days a week. So I picked up 2 boxes of good pastries, a couple cartons of proper coffee, not the burnt mud from the break room, and set them up on the small conference table near my desk. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet, simple gesture. What I didn't expect was the silence. You know that moment when you start to realize something is off? When the room feels too still? The air too empty? That was me, standing there with a stack of cups and a stupid plastic knife, waiting for someone, anyone, to walk over and say the bare minimum. Hey man, happy birthday! Or even just free food. I would have taken anything. But minute after minute passed and nobody came. At first, I thought everyone must have been caught up in tasks. Our team had a tight deadline, so it made sense. I checked Slack, no mentions. I glanced over the cubicles, no movement. It felt like the whole floor had swallowed itself. I used the time to finish an email, pretending like I wasn't noticing the untouched pastries behind me. I tried to convince myself I didn't care, but there was a pit forming in my stomach, the kind that tells you the thing you're trying to ignore is actually happening. Around 11:15, I decided to stretch my legs and see what was going on. That's when I realized everyone was gone. Not out sick, not working from home. Gone as in nowhere on the floor, no chatter, no printers running, no chairs shifting. The office felt abandoned, like a movie set after the director yells, "Cut!" I stepped toward the elevator, thinking maybe there was a fire drill I somehow missed, but no alarms had gone off. That's when I heard laughter echoing faintly from the lobby area. A whole group of voices, bright and carefree, like they were having the time of their lives. I followed the sound, and when I rounded the corner, I froze. There they were, my entire department, my manager, my teammates, even the interns, all of them gathered near the glass doors, jackets on, coffees in hand. They were leaving together. For what? I didn't know yet. But the weight of it settled in my chest before I could pretend it didn't. No one noticed me right away, and I had a second to study their faces. They looked excited, like kids about to be let out for summer. Then one person finally turned and saw me. Chris? Of course it was Chris. If anyone in the office lived off attention like oxygen, it was him. Loud, charming in that superficial look-at-me way, the kind of guy who always had a story to tell and always made sure you heard it twice. He'd been copying little things from me for months, phrases, ideas, even small habits, but I shrugged it off. I'm not the kind who likes confrontation, but today, he saw me first. He flashed that smug half-smile he does when he's already running the narrative in his head. "Oh, hey man," he said. "We were just heading out." I looked at the group. "Where?" "Team lunch," he said casually, like it was no big deal. "Manager's idea." My manager didn't look at me. Nobody did. I felt something hot in my chest. Embarrassment, disbelief, something in between. "I didn't know about it," I said. Chris shrugged, stepping forward, and that's when I noticed his outfit. My heart actually skipped. He was wearing my sweater, not the same brand, not the same color. The same exact one I ordered last week, the limited drop from a small designer I liked. He'd even paired it with the same model of sneakers I'd shown him accidentally. When he leaned over my desk days ago, he caught my staring. "Oh, you like this?" He tugged on the sleeve. "Thought I'd switch up the style a bit." I knew it wasn't a coincidence. The timing was too perfect, too intentional. Behind him, someone said, "Come on, we're going to be late." Chris clapped my shoulder as he walked past me. "Later, man." And just like that, they all filed out. The doors closed behind them. Their laughter faded. I stood there alone, watching their reflections disappear. I went back to my desk in that slow, sinking way you walk when your body feels heavier than it should. The pastries were still untouched, the coffee untouched. The conference table looked like a forgotten offering. I sat down, I told myself it was fine. I told myself it didn't matter. But sometimes the smallest cracks happen quietly. Sometimes disrespect doesn't scream. It whispers. And something in me shifted in that moment. Something I couldn't ignore anymore. You'd think that was the worst part of the day. But it wasn't. Not even close. Because an hour later, I found out why everyone had really left. And that was the moment I realized my birthday wasn't just ignored. It was taken. When the team came back from their lunch, it wasn't subtle. They walked in loud, energized, carrying branded cups and merch bags from a rooftop restaurant 2 blocks away. The kind of place you don't just stumble into, you plan it, you book it. And you definitely don't forget to invite the one guy who sits 10 feet from you every day. I sat at my desk, trying to look busy, though every sound felt sharp. A burst of laughter, shoes scraping, someone saying, "That was actually so fun." Then a voice I knew too well. "Chris really pulled it off, huh?" Pulled it off? The words landed harder than I expected. So it wasn't a manager's idea. It wasn't some last-minute decision. Chris organized it. He gathered everyone. He handpicked the list. And somehow, out of 30 people, I was the only name missing. I opened a blank document and stared at it, pretending to type. My birthday pastries still sat untouched, the glaze drying, the boxes slowly collapsing. I felt stupid even thinking about them. It wasn't about sugar or coffee, it was about being erased. But that wasn't the part that stuck with me. It was the sweater, the shoes, the timing, the way Chris had looked at me like he was proud of something. Around 3 p.m., Slack pinged. A direct message from Chris. "Hey man, didn't realize you were planning something today. Sorry if the timing was weird. Didn't mean anything by it." I stared at the screen. The message had that fake casual tone he used whenever he wanted to look innocent. I typed out 3 different replies, deleted them all. Finally, I sent nothing. 10 minutes later, he walked over and leaned on the wall of my cubicle, holding his coffee like he owned the place. "You good?" he asked. "Fine." "Cool," he nodded, glancing at the pastries behind me. "You should have said it was your birthday, man. We could have done something." I didn't look up. "I did last week?" He paused, pretending to think. Right. My bad." Then he gave me a smile. The kind people wear when they want you to know they've won. That should have been the end of it. I could have shrugged it off like I always did. But something in me, call it exhaustion, call it humiliation, tilted off center. Later that day, during our afternoon check-in, our manager praised Chris for his creative initiative on the Turner project. My project. The one I'd been working on for a month. The one Chris had asked to peek at last week because he wanted to learn from my structure. I felt my jaw tense as Chris accepted the compliment like it was nothing, like he hadn't walked into my office, skimmed through my draft, and nodded with that same smug half grin. After the meeting, people gathered around him, congratulating him. Someone said, "Dude, that presentation was so tight." Someone else added, "You always come up with the cleanest frameworks." I sat at my desk, hearing phrases they should have been saying to me. It wasn't jealousy. It was theft. Quiet theft, the kind you can't prove unless you're willing to drag your entire reputation into the mud. So I did what I always do. I kept my head down and focused, or tried to. At 4:50, as I was packing my laptop, I overheard something that made me freeze mid-motion. 2 coworkers stood by the printer whispering, "Did you see Chris wearing Evan's exact outfit today?" I did. Honestly, it's weird. He's been copying him for months. Right? And the lunch thing. That was kind of harsh. Kind of, he straight up said. "Let's go before Evan comes back." I heard him. My hand tightened around the laptop sleeve. So it wasn't an accident. It wasn't ignorance. It wasn't poor communication. He had excluded me deliberately. I don't know what reaction they expected from me, but I said nothing. I just grabbed my coat and walked toward the elevators. The doors were closing when I heard someone jogging behind me. Chris. Of course. "Hey, hold the door," he said. I did, out of habit. He stepped inside, pulling out a snack bar like we were friends. "Crazy day, huh?" he said. I didn't answer. He unwrapped the bar. "Just so you know, the Turner presentation, I'm adding your name on the doc. You helped a bit." A bit. The elevator hummed, the numbers blinking down one floor at a time. My reflection looked tired. Small. Chris leaned closer. "But come on, don't be weird about the lunch thing. Nobody meant anything." I finally turned and looked directly at him. "I didn't say anything." He smiled too quickly. "Exactly, it's all chill." The elevator dinged. He walked out first. I stayed inside for another ride, letting the doors shut again. Driving home, I replayed the day in my head. Not the hurt, but the patterns. Chris wearing my clothes, Chris stealing my project, Chris scheduling a team event specifically to pull the spotlight away. It all felt intentional. But what bothered me most wasn't what he did. It was the realization of what I had let him do. When I got home, I sat in the car for a full minute, engine off, listening to the quiet tick of cooling metal. I didn't feel angry, just hollow, like something had been scooped out of me. But that feeling only lasted until later that evening, when I opened my email and saw a forwarded message from our manager, a message Chris accidentally left my name on, a message that changed everything. The moment I read it, I understood this wasn't petty office drama. It wasn't about stolen pastries or outfits. It was a setup, and not the kind you ignore. The email came in at 8:42 p.m., right when I sat down with a reheated dinner and the kind of exhaustion that feels personal. I wasn't expecting anything work-related at that hour, so when I saw my manager's name in the notification, my stomach tightened. The subject line was simple. Turner deck adjustments. I opened it. At first, it looked like a normal thread. Quick back and forth between my manager and Chris about final corrections and tone consistency. Then I scrolled down. That's when I saw it. A message from Chris sent earlier that afternoon, written with the confidence of someone who assumes no one will ever see it. "Yeah, Evan's been dragging the Turner project for weeks. I cleaned it up and restructured it so it actually makes sense now. Just loop me in on any next steps so he doesn't slow us down again." Slow us down? Dragging the project. He rewrote my work, insulted me, and then took credit for fixing what I'd built from scratch. And the only reason I saw the message was because my manager accidentally forwarded the entire thread without trimming it. Pure chance, or something close enough to feel like fate. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't swallow it. I didn't excuse it. I didn't tell myself, "It's fine, it's just work." Something sharp and electric moved through me, not rage, not heat, just clarity. I reread the message 3 times. Each time, the same thought formed. If he's willing to lie about my work in writing, what else has he already done? So I started digging. I opened old documents, revision histories, Slack logs, shared drive activity. Nothing dramatic, just quiet steps, methodical. I wasn't hunting for revenge. I was looking for truth. And the truth was worse than I expected. For months, Chris had been editing my drafts without telling me, not improving, altering, softening good phrases, adding unnecessary slides, shifting my structure so the final product looked sloppy. Then he'd forward his version to the team first, making it seem like he'd rescued the deck after I'd half finished it. There were Slack messages where he told interns not to bother looping me in, comments on docs claiming I was unavailable, on days I'd been sitting 2 chairs away. And the worst part? Nobody questioned it. He'd built a story, brick by brick, making me look incompetent, in a way subtle enough to pass as fact. When I finally leaned back, it felt like someone else's life spread across my screen. But the most important detail hadn't happened yet. It came the next morning. I arrived early, earlier than anyone else, and sat quietly in the corner of the office kitchen, sipping the bitter communal coffee. My head wasn't buzzing. Everything in me felt still. At 8:01, my manager walked in. He stopped when he saw me. Morning, he said carefully. Morning, he hesitated. Did you see the forwarding error last night? I nodded. Yes? He exhaled with a tension I didn't fully understand. Look, Evan, I didn't mean for that to happen. It was careless, and I apologize. I should have trimmed the thread. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I asked, Do you actually believe what he wrote? He looked away. That told me more than words could. Before he could offer some diplomatic non-answer, the office door opened. Chris walked in, wearing another outfit that looked suspiciously familiar. Same jacket brand I wore last month. Same shoes I mentioned liking in passing. He saw us flash that too-wide smile and set down his bag. Morning, team. My manager stiffened. I straightened. Chris noticed. Everything good? My manager cleared his throat. Evan saw the email thread. For half a second, Chris's smile flickered. Just half. Then he put on his performance voice. Oh man, that was a totally taken out of context. You know how threads get. I was trying to streamline communication. I stood. He stopped talking. I'm going to be very direct, I said. You've been misreporting my work for months. You've stolen credit. You've sabotaged my drafts. And now you're lying to management about me slowing you down. His expression froze. Not guilt, not fear. Calculation. Evan, he said slowly, you're overreacting. Seriously, you're reading into things that weren't meant that way. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I checked the file histories. His eyes sharpened. I continued. I checked every edited slide, every deleted line, every forwarded version you sent before I had a chance to review anything. I checked your Slack messages to interns. I checked timestamps on drive copies. Everything. For the first time since I'd known him, Chris had nothing to say. My manager looked between us, eyes widening slightly. Is this true? Chris shifted it. I mean, look, some adjustments were made, but that's how collaboration works. No, I said. Collaboration is when you add value. You erased mine. Silence settled, heavy. My manager straightened. Evan, do you have documentation? Yes. Chris turned to him, voice rising a fraction. This is ridiculous. He's twisting. My manager raised a hand. Chris! Stop! That was new. Nobody had ever told Chris to stop anything. Let's go to a meeting room, my manager said quietly. And that was the moment. The crack. The shift. Something inside Chris flickered into panic. Barely visible, but there. He tried to recover. Look, if there were misunderstandings, I'm sure we can fix... We're not fixing anything, I said. We're clarifying. We walked into a meeting room. I connected my laptop. I opened the shared drive. The revision logs, the Slack exports, the discrepancies, the timestamps showing him editing my deck at 1 a.m., then forwarding it at 8 a.m. with cleaned up, ready for review. My manager watched in absolute silence, eyes hardening with each click. Chris's face slowly collapsed from confidence to confusion to fear. Real fear. When it was over, my manager leaned back in his chair. Evan, he said, thank you for bringing this forward. Then he turned to Chris. What you've done isn't a misunderstanding. It's deliberate misrepresentation of work, and that won't be tolerated. Chris opened his mouth, but no sound came out. My manager stood. I'll be escalating this. You should step away from the Turner project immediately. Chris finally spoke. You can't be serious. I am, my manager replied, and you know why. He left the room. The door clicked shut. Chris sat alone with me, staring at the table, his breath uneven. Then he looked up. You set me up, he whispered. No, I said plainly. You set yourself up. I just stopped looking the other way. His jaw clenched. For a moment I thought he'd say something cruel, something loud. But he didn't. He just swallowed hard. And the room felt very, very quiet. They thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. Because consequences don't arrive all at once. Sometimes they start with a crack, and then everything falls. Over the next few days, the office shifted in ways I didn't expect. Not dramatically, not loudly, just a subtle rearranging of gravity. People weren't avoiding Chris exactly, but they weren't orbiting him anymore. Their smiles were tighter, their jokes shorter, their attention drifting somewhere else, toward work, toward each other, anywhere but him. When he walked into a room, conversations didn't pick up. They paused. Not because people were judging him, but because the performance he lived on suddenly had no audience. I kept my routine the same. Came in on time, did my work, logged my progress in detail. I didn't avoid him, didn't gloat, didn't say a word more than necessary. I wasn't trying to punish him. I was just done carrying the weight of someone who treated me like background scenery. By the second week, the consequences started landing. First, he was removed from the Turner project entirely. No soft explanation, no temporary reassignment. Just a clean cut. The project team didn't fight it. Nobody asked where he'd gone. Then our manager started reviewing other projects where Chris had taken credit. Quietly at first, then more openly. It didn't take long for things to unravel. The patterns were obvious now that someone was finally willing to look. Edits that didn't fit, timelines that contradicted his story, comments that didn't match the work. People who'd been hesitant to speak up suddenly felt safe enough to tell the truth. One afternoon, I returned from lunch to find Chris sitting at his desk, staring at his monitor like it had betrayed him. His posture was different, smaller somehow. The air around him wasn't sharp anymore. It was hollow. He didn't look up when I walked by, and for the first time, I realized he wasn't pretending. He was overwhelmed, cornered by the very tactics he'd built his confidence on. Later that day, he asked if we could talk. I didn't want a private conversation, so I agreed only if we spoke in the open lounge, where anyone could see but nobody needed to listen. He sat across from me, hands clasped, legs restless. He looked like someone trying to recognize the ground he was standing on and finding it wasn't there anymore. Evan, he took a breath, I don't know what you want from me. I studied his expression. It wasn't angry, it wasn't defensive. It was confused, like he still didn't understand how he'd ended up here. I don't want anything, I said. He swallowed. You really had to take it this far? I kept my voice level. I didn't take it anywhere. You did. He looked away. His foot kept tapping against the floor. Look, I messed up. But everyone messes up. You could have talked to me. I did, I said quietly. Just not with words. He stiffened, realizing what I meant. Every meeting, every ignored slight, every stolen line, they'd all been signals, and he'd stepped over them like they weren't even there. Chris leaned forward, voice low. They're talking about letting me go. That's not my decision. But you don't care. I met his eyes. I care about my work. I care about being treated with respect. I don't care about protecting someone who refused to offer the same. He held my gaze for a long moment. Then he slumped back, defeated. I never thought you'd actually fight back, he muttered. I didn't, I said. I just told the truth. He didn't reply. He just stared at the floor, as if seeing it for the first time. 2 days later, HR called him in. By noon, his desk was empty. No box walk, no dramatic farewell, just absence. The kind that leaves the room lighter, but not louder. People didn't celebrate. They didn't whisper. They didn't pretend it hadn't happened. They just kept working, but with a different energy, steadier, quieter, better. A week after that, my manager asked me to step into his office. He didn't dance around it. We're restructuring the team, he said, and we'd like you to take lead on the new client pipeline. I didn't react immediately, not out of shock, but because something in me had stopped expecting the worst. He continued, You've been carrying more weight than we realized. You've earned this. I nodded slowly. Thank you. He gave a small, genuine smile. And, happy belated birthday, Evan. I'm sorry we missed it. For the first time in a long time, I believe someone meant those words. The next month was quieter. Work felt smoother. People came to me with questions they used to bring to Chris, not out of pity, out of trust. I didn't fill the space he left, I just stopped shrinking inside it. When my next birthday came around, I didn't plan anything. No pastries, no coffee, no expectations. But that morning, when I walked into the office, there was a small box on my desk, a simple card on top. From the team, for the guy who's been doing the work all along. Inside was a mug with the company logo and a few signatures. Nothing fancy, but honest. My manager stopped by on his way to a meeting. "We've got lunch reservations at 1, he said. "You're coming. No excuses." I smiled. A real one this time. "All right." And as I sat down at my desk, logging into the morning tasks, I realized something. The satisfaction didn't come from Chris losing. It came from me finally refusing to disappear. It came from standing up without shouting, from choosing truth over noise, from letting consequences find their way without forcing my hand. I didn't ruin his career. He built a staircase out of lies. I just stopped holding the railing. And for the first time in years, I felt something simple and solid settle in my chest. Peace. The kind you don't have to earn. The kind you just stop giving away.